So I kind of grew up not having a lot of money. She worked at a call center, so we had kind of minimum wage earnings. And I realized early on that money was a really important lubricant to having a good life. And I realized how important that was to basically everything. But then once I acquired wealth, and I got to a point where I am today, where I have several $1 million, I realized that money is not that important anymore. And so in the beginning of your journey, it's really, really important. But then as you elevate throughout the journey to FIRE and then beyond, you find that it's not so much about the money, but more about gratification, more about like building who you are as a person and then helping other people to kind of reach that as well. So that's what I derive a lot of pleasure from these days. I also, I'll go back really quick. I have two amazing daughters, Emma and Ariel, and I have an amazing wife of 11 years this November. We've been together since high school.
Aww.
So when I went off at 17 to Western University, she came along with me, and she invested in me and took a chance on me, and it's been going well ever since. I'm so thankful for her support the whole way. I will quickly point out before on this slide, you can kind of see the pictures there. That is the Orlando mansion that we picked up while we were in Orlando there. There's the front of it, the back pool, the waterfall grotto, and the third floor with views to Disney. So this kind of just happened by mistake. I was looking at properties because it's something I like to do for fun. I was in Orlando and I'm like, I'm pretty bored, we should go look at some properties. Let's go look at some mansions. And I got a hold of some numbers, some of the Airbnb luxury numbers, and I was like, wow. I looked at one property, this property is generating $400,000 in revenue. I'm like, what? This $1.2 million house is generating $400,000 a year on Airbnb consistently? Show me the numbers. And I saw the numbers, and we saw the numbers, and we're gonna expand to the US. So that's what's been up recently. Kind of talked about this a little bit, but in the beginning of your journey, it's really, really important to understand. This is what I discovered at 17 when I found the FIRE movement. I didn't found it, but I found it on the internet. And one of the core tenets was this idea that you have to delay gratification. And so I subscribed to that at a really young age. And I'm living proof that if you start something and you commit your mind to it, doesn't matter what age you are, you could be 40 right now, you could be 50, then in about 7 years, you can transform your life. So anyone can retire in about 5 to 7 years with or without an aggressive real estate investing strategy. So you don't necessarily need to be as aggressive as I was. Again, I retired in 2017, February, from my day job. I was an analyst in consulting. I'm gonna get that in a sec here. I did that without, my slides, where is it? There it is. You guys will see my timeline here. Without any real, I don't know, I didn't have anything special. I didn't have anything that made me really special. And that's the point I kind of want to make here, is that like, maybe I'm a little bit smart, maybe I'm a little bit more hardworking than the average person, but there's nothing really special about me that allowed me to succeed. And anyone could take exactly what I did and replicate it. And that's sort of the point that I want to make, is that I was just working as an analyst, and then after work, I would go chase real estate deals, right? I would go chase this idea that I can invest my time at an early age and it would compound and it would grow. And then my money would compound and it would grow in such amazing ways. And I want to just jump back real quick to this slide, because I had a mindset shift when I was 17 in my dorm rooms at Western. I went off to university. And about the passive income spectrum, right? I talked to probably a dozen really successful partners and investors and just people who are like just killing it in their job, like top lawyers and accountants and things like that, when I was 17 as part of a project in my first year of university. And they were all like amazingly successful. But one underlying theme I noticed was a little bit of unhappiness for those folks who are in that top level position. There seemed to be a lot of divorce, a higher rate than normal. There seemed to be a lot of like dissatisfaction. A lot of people were in debt up to their eyeballs, and that, like when I poked deep, and I thought, well, there's got to be something here that's more fulfilling than just grinding to a career, right? Just grinding to become a CEO or just hustling, that sort of thing. So I sort of discovered this spectrum of passive income. That was when I first discovered this idea of passive income, which we all kind of take for granted nowadays. But that was sort of what I drew when I was like 17. And it was like this idea that I knew I had to hustle. I had to create an active job where I had to do something to earn money. I had to trade my time for money. And then eventually I could grow that to a point where I could outsource and get someone else to go ahead and do that. And then eventually I could partner with people and be passive. And there's like lending, and then there's the ultimate, which is dividends, and it requires the least amount of of energy or effort. So I was trying to get to the top of the pyramid, and now it's funny, I really enjoy being kind of actually in the middle of the pyramid. I enjoy mentorship. I have a couple of mentees that live in the basement of my 8-bedroom house. I have a duplex that I live in a house hack to this day. And one of them just, again, providing free value. He came up to me and said, hey, can I just provide some free value for you? I was like, yes, you can. He moved from Toronto, him and another guy from Sudbury. They moved into my house and just started helping me. Helped me renovate my properties, just follow me along. He's like, hey, can I just drive you to showings? Can I just take you around and show you things? And, you know, whatever, just add value any way that I can. And I accepted. And today, one of them, after a year, already has almost $3 million in real estate under contract, going from Home Depot employee to now having almost $3 million in real estate. Watching him transform over the last year has been amazing. And one of the most fulfilling things that I've done in the last year. One of the other key learnings I had around 18 or 19 was this idea of leverage. And it wasn't just about money, it was about leveraging knowledge. So you could learn things, you could leverage that knowledge, other people's knowledge, your own knowledge. You could use marketing to reach a greater audience and have much more impact. You could leverage your network, by going to meetings like this, you can meet people. And I undervalue this one a lot. It's one of my greatest failures. I didn't go to networking groups until I was probably 22 or 23. I waited until I had 3 or 4 properties because I felt like I had nothing to add. So I just didn't go out. I just stayed in my room. And that was a mistake. Like, you should be out here networking with people because you know what? Someone has a solution to your problem. Mm-hmm. And if you're out there sharing, maybe your problem is someone else's solution, right? So that's something huge, big takeaway. And then leveraging time, really important. Be efficient with your time. Utilize your time well. Instead of spending 8 hours watching Netflix, spend a few hours investing in your future, looking at maybe real estate deals or building high-value skills. And the last is systems and technologies. A couple of years ago, I did a video about that. So, yeah, my journey. So at 19, I was buying my first property. I knew nothing about real estate investing. Bought this property for a couple $100,000 in London, Ontario, where I currently live. And I just started fixing up the basement, added bedrooms, put a little apartment in there, and through a year of renovating while I went to school, I learned how to house hack, which is the idea that you live in a property and you have another unit or some extra bedrooms you can rent out, and that other unit pays your mortgage and you can live for free. And we've house hacked since 19. That's been a cornerstone of our, budgeting plan that allowed us to reach FIRE so early, is because we didn't have any housing expenses for the last 8 years. Another thing is, when I started working as an analyst, I acquired my second property, at the start of my journey, I was like, oh, I'm going to acquire one property, and then maybe another property in a few years, and another property a few years after that. But I was also doing stock investing at the same time. I looked at my returns from my stock portfolio, and I'm an Ivy Finance grad, and I looked at, so I would say I'm above average in my understanding of financial analysis. And I looked at my rental property, which I spent very little time on. It was just like renting to students. I just collected rental income. And I was like, geez, I was spending way more time looking at my stock portfolio and getting a much worse return than I was from real estate. I was like, well, why is that? Again, I went back to my core principles of leverage. I was like, geez, I put 20% down on this property. I'm levered 5 to 1. My return on asset is about 10%. My cost of debt is about 3%. There's a 70% spread at that time, and it's levered 5 to 1. So every dollar I invested in real estate produced me a spread of 7% times 5. So I was getting 30 to 40% minimum without any appreciation. This is factoring in a 0 appreciation rate, which, if you guys know, in London in the last 3 years, we all done really well in appreciation. But I didn't plan for that when I was investing. And I sort of discovered that around property too. And I'm like, geez, I need to stop investing in stock, stop wasting my time with that, and double down on real estate. It's the only asset class that I knew of that you could borrow 5 to 1 at such a cheap cost of debt. If you borrow for stocks, you'll never get more than like a 2 to 1 leverage typically unless you're ultra wealthy, and it'll be at a 7 or 8% cost of debt. With real estate, you can borrow at like 2.5%, 3%. There was a point, I remember in like 2014 or 2015 when I built my first house, and I think we borrowed 1.84% discounted 2-year fixed. Money was almost free at some point. It was just wild. And so I doubled down on that. I was like, this is amazing. I was telling everyone on Facebook, I was telling all my friends, I'm like, guys, you need to be investing in real estate. It's the best thing ever. Because you can go borrow millions of dollars, the bank's money, at 2 or 3%, and invest that in assets that have an 8 to 10 cap rate if you know how to find them, you know how to make a deal into a deal, eventually by adding units or things like that. And so I did that, and I made that my life mission from like 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, and then 2017, I acquired like 15 or so properties, and I'm like, geez, I'm making a lot more from my cash flow every month than that I'm making from my job as a manager in consulting. And I've been promoted from analyst to senior analyst to manager. I'm still making a lot more in real estate just from cash flow. Forget the mortgage pay down, forget the appreciation upside, forget the value add of doing a renovation for $20,000 and unlocking another $20,000 in the property or $30,000 in the property. And so I quit my job, became a full-time real estate investor in 2017. Actually, that's not true. I quit my job, played a lot of video games for a while, spent a lot of time with my first daughter, and watched a lot of movies, hung out with a lot of friends. And then I was like, I'm bored, and I need to go back to what I love, which is looking at properties. And I did that. And then in 2018, we acquired 50 buildings. And so that was a really, really fun experience. It was a lot of work. I kind of came about out of a Facebook post I made just to like friends. And a friend of mine reached out and was like, he went to IB with me and his parents had a little bit of money. And he said, man, what you're doing in London, Ontario, that's amazing. You quit your job and you've built this huge portfolio all by yourself using bank money. Do you think I could do the same thing? Yeah. I think you could probably do exactly what I'm doing. The market hasn't changed that much. For the record, London, Ontario from 2012 to 2017, there's almost no appreciation. It was like less than inflation. So I was like, yeah, this is totally possible. Not much has really changed. And then the market blew up in 2017 in London, just at the time we started to buy. I don't know if it was because guys like myself and Matt McKeever with our YouTube channels, I don't know if it's because we were talking about all this stuff, we were sharing all this stuff in London, but investors started pouring in, and I started doing joint venture partnerships. He was my first, and then I just started sharing the results I was getting. I was buying properties for 200 grand, they're worth 350 because the markets were hot, things were appreciating, we were doing a lot of duplex conversions and stuff like that. I made investors a lot of money, and then they talked about the fact that I made a lot of money. And I leveraged, the thing with joint venture partnerships and how we got $20 million in real estate in such a short amount of time is understanding that money isn't the most important thing in the deal. And that was a hard thing for me to understand, having saved and worked so hard for all of my deals by myself, just my wife and I. But I realized there's kind of three components, right, to every real estate transaction, right? There's like the money part of it, the financing. There's the management part, which is construction, management, and all the active stuff you have to do. And then there's the deal itself, which most people don't give enough credit, because a good deal is the most important thing of all three. If you have two of the three, the third one always comes automatically. If you have a good enough deal, and you have the expertise and proven track record to manage it, the money comes on its own. Literally in the post, I'll have deal gone in like minutes. I put it on Kijiji, it'd be gone, right? People would check you out, and then I found that it was really easy to raise money that way. I didn't really go out and ask for it. I didn't really paid advertising that way. Just sort of through word of mouth, we have acquired quite a few units. So we got about 60 buildings at the time, a bit more now, 110 units, 350 bedrooms, and a 7-figure rent roll in such short order. And I learned a lot through that too, through scaling the business. It was not what I wanted it to be. And so I'm no longer doing joint venture partnerships. I just help my mentees and I'm the mentor to my mentees, and we joint venture in that way. But it grew way too fast, way too quickly. And so I'm a big fan of saying, slow down, make sure your systems are all ready. And if you really do want to do this and make it a huge business, you can do it. But just take caution as you do it. It took me out of retirement, is the way I'll put it. I retired, and it took me out of retirement. Even just servicing, even though we had employees, even though I had people and companies we were partnering with that were helping us get through the workload, it was a lot. And so I will share that one tidbit as well. The next thing is creative financing is another key takeaway that I discovered when I started joint venture partnering. And I discovered that money is everywhere, and it's easy to get if you can figure out how to structure the right terms for that deal. So vendor takebacks were a big thing I started figuring out. They were really easy to do. There was a lot of private sellers, less so now, more so then. There's a lot of wholesalers in my market now that are knocking doors, so it's getting harder and harder. There was a time where I could go knock doors on a Saturday with a friend, and we'd have a property under contract just in one afternoon, like 6 or 7 hours of knocking doors. Or I'd go on Kijiji, and I would pick up like 20 for sale privately, and by the end of the weekend, I'd met with like 5 or 6 of them, and 2 of them wanted to do vendor takebacks. Right? So there are a lot of opportunities that way where you can structure things. Some people are happy at 3 or 4% interest-only payments on their vendor take-back situation. There are a lot of really cool scenarios you can do where you could spread out their capital gain over a longer period of time. So you can get super flexible, and sometimes you give them the price they want, which is way more than you want to pay for the property, but you get it back in terms like really good vendor take-back mortgage rates or things like that. So that was cool. And then private lenders are something I discovered too. I really had only worked with A-lender financing for the most part, and other friends and investors, A-lenders. So I discovered private financing was an easy way to close deals quickly. So that was something we learned that was quite key. And I guess what I want to share is, with this slide, is the idea that when you're investing in real estate, it's an active business. And I thought it was passive when I first started investing in real estate, but for the most part, it's quite active unless you're just doing like lending. When you go to invest in real estate and you go to invest in properties, a key consideration should be, in my opinion, the level of return on time, return on energy, return on equity, as opposed to just the raw return. You gotta think about things like, what are my goals? Like, are you okay having student rentals, for instance? Are you okay having calls from students? Are you okay with C level or class properties where the tenants are going to have a lot more damage to your units, you're going to have a lot more stress and drama associated with that unit? And so that's a big consideration, I think, when you start investing and building your strategy. It's a big one to think about. And then when you're building your plan of where you want to go and what you want to do with your real estate investing journey, make sure you think, what is your why? And find out what that why is. And for me, it was about finding out how to elevate from poverty, how to elevate from how I grew up, and how to find a way to provide a better life for my family, and provide a level of safety and comfort that only comes from having that level of passive income, right? And I'll be honest, it was driven by the fact that I couldn't find a job that I loved. I worked at KPMG in accounting, I worked at some other places as well, and I just didn't like any job I'd ever had. I worked at bank teller and a bunch of other jobs. So I was like, geez, what I really want is to not have to work. And so that was my biggest drive, was like the need to not have to work. And in that, I found what I loved to do, which was teach people, mentor, and I love looking at properties. So that's sort of what I do today. And yeah, I just have a lot of fun with it. It's one of my favorite things. I recommend, if you're trying to find out what it is you want to be doing, if you're here, you're like, I have 5 properties, do I want to get 5 more? Do I want to sell? Do I have 1 property? Do I want to go down this road? And how do I want to do it? For me, I found the intersection of mastery, autonomy, and purpose to be the most important pieces of the puzzle. Mastery is the idea that you should do something that you have mastery over. Autonomy is the idea that you have control in the way that you do what you do. And the third thing is purpose. Are you meant to be doing that with your life? So maybe you're really good at real estate investing, like I happen to have been really, really good at creating value in properties, but I didn't love it. I didn't like the construction, I didn't like the management pieces of it. What are you meant to be doing? You find the intersection of those 3 things and you'll love your life. And you'll live the fire life you've always wanted to live. And that's the big thing right there. If it's okay, I'll open up for question and answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Usually in these things, when I start my presentation, I flip back and people have questions, they want to zoom in. Feel free to ask anything you'd like. I'm an open book.